Greetings, my brothers and sisters of the Discalced Carmelite Secular Order, or anyone who's watching this who's interested in the Discalced Carmelite Secular Order. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, whenever it is that you're watching this. We are doing the constitutions, explaining some of the rationale, some of the reasons, the way things are worded. I want to repeat the idea that in law, anything that resembles a law, and the Constitution, in a certain sense, is a law. It's the guiding laws of the institution known as the Discalced Carmelite Secular Order. In any legal document, the words are very important. Actually, in anything, the words that we use are very important. And the words have to correspond to the actions that are taken because of the law. So we're doing the constitutions, and we're up to number 12, article number 12. I will read it as I have before, and then I will comment or explain different parts. Number 12 reads, by the promise made to the community in the presence of the superior of the order or his delegate, the person becomes a full member of the secular order. By this commitment, members strive to acquire the necessary training to know the reasons, the context, and purpose of the evangelical lifestyle they are undertaking. The promise heightens and enriches the baptismal commitment in secular Carmelites. This includes those called to married life, both as spouses and as parents. The promise is renewed once a year at Easter time. There are a number of points in this number that are important to understand. Again, I want to point out the word promise, not promises. By the promise, by means of the promise made to the community. A vow is made to God. The promise is made to the community. That community that you are joining, they are the recipients of your commitment. So, by the promise made to the community, in the presence of the superior of the order or his delegate. So it has to be present. Someone delegated, if not by the superior of the province, then by some other way that the person is delegated, or his delegate. For a number of years, I was because I was the general delegate. The number of places in the world where the secular order existed, but was not in the jurisdiction of any province, but was rather under the general house. I was the provincial delegate for those communities. I was the delegate for those communities as general delegate. But it always has to respect the chain of command, the chain of authority. If there's a province, if there's a community, if there's a community that is in the territory of a province, it's the provincial who delegates the person to receive the commitment, the promise. You cannot ask the general delegate to delegate someone, because it's not my responsibility. It's not the responsibility of the general delegate. It's not even the responsibility of the general. It's the responsibility of the provincial. Because you are joining his province, the province that he represents as the highest authority, the chief authority of the order in that province. So you are becoming a member of that province. And that provincial is the one who has the responsibility for delegating the person who receives the promise. It was generally understood that those areas of the world that had communities of the secular order that were not under any particular province, it was generally understood that they're immediately under the generalate. So the general delegate represents the general to the whole order, but jurisdictionally only has authority in the areas that are not a part of a province. By the promise made to the community in the presence of the superior of the order or his delegate, the person becomes a full member of the secular order. When you are a novice or a postulant or an aspirant, you are not fully a member of the province or a member of the order. You belong to the community, but jurisdictionally, legally, you do not become a member of the order until you make the promise. Aspirant, aspiring, you're aspiring. Postulant comes from the Latin verb postulare, which means to request. You are requesting to enter the novitiate. And the novice is the time, the 2 years that are set aside for you to prepare yourselves to make the promise. So you have 2, 3, 4 years or 4 periods before you make the promise so that you can clarify for yourself and so that the order can clarify for you if this is your vocation, if this is part of your vocation, because you have, of course, the fundamental vocation of either marriage or the single life, to which you make some sort of commitment with your life. And the vocation of the secular order is auxiliary to the primary vocation. So the person when do you become a member of the order? When you make the first promise. When you make the temporary promise. The first promise. By this commitment, members strive to acquire the necessary training. There's training. This is what the program of formation is about. The formation program is to train you. The training. Why did I use the word training in writing this number? Because it's a lifestyle. You're being trained to live in a certain way. It's not an optional course in a university where you take an optional course just to learn something. It's not. You can be able to quote St. Teresa up and down, exact quotes, memorize practically all of St. Teresa or St. John of the Cross or St. Teresa. But you might not have a vocation to be a secular order member. There are many people who have written books on Carmelite spirituality who are not Carmelites. And they didn't want to be Carmelites. It wasn't their vocation. Before the translation in English of Father Kieran Kavanaugh, Lord have mercy on him, and Cardinal Father Otilio Rodriguez, the most famous English translation was by E. Allison Pierce. Wonderful translation. I have both Father Kieran's and Professor E. Allison Pierce's translations, and I refer to them both. But E. Allison Pierce wasn't even a Catholic. He was an Anglican, Episcopalian. Loved St. Teresa, loved St. John of the Cross. Spent years translating, and translated everything. The letters of Saint Teresa. Everything, both versions of the spiritual canticle, both versions of the living flame. But he wasn't even Catholic, let alone any kind of minister. The famous book called The Crucible of Love, I think it was called The Crucible of Love, was St. John about the Carmelite spirituality, was written by an Anglican priest, Truman Dickens. And a very excellent book discussing Carmelite spirituality. So there's Carmelite spirituality and there's Carmelite lifestyle. There are perhaps millions of people who live Carmelite spirituality, who are not members of the order, who are not living the lifestyle that is expected or hoped for in the legislation of the constitutions, of the friars or of the nuns or of the seculars. Because you are being trained to live a lifestyle. Number 12 says, by this commitment, members strive to acquire the necessary training, not necessary knowledge, the necessary training to know the reasons, the content, and the purpose of the evangelical lifestyle they're undertaking. The purpose of formation is to know how to live what we commit ourselves to. That's for the friars, for the nuns, and for the seculars. Now you basically have between 5.5 to 6 years of formation before you make the definitive promise. In Indonesia, we have practically 10 years of formation before they make the definitive promise. For the nuns, it's 3, 4, 5, 6 years. There's time given to be able to discern. Is this going to make your life happier? Is this going to make your problems more spiritual, enable you to handle your problems more spiritually, and to be able to live your life more happily, to be able to live your life with a certain commitment, with a certain purpose, the purpose, the reasons for your lifestyle. What are the reasons for your lifestyle? Why do you pray? Why do you read St. Teresa, St. John of the Cross? Why? The content of the evangelical lifestyle that we live. We live in a certain way. We do certain things. There are certain things that become part of our responsibility in being a Carmelite. And they're not for the purpose, for the person who has the vocation. The content of our commitment is not heavy. It's difficult sometimes to make to do what we're supposed to do, but if it's so heavy that we cannot do it, well, that just means we don't belong to. This is not where our vocation is. The obligations of prayer, the obligations of community life with your community, attending meetings. If they're too difficult for you, well, there's no shame in that. It's just, this is not where you belong. It might inconvenience you sometimes to have to do what you're supposed to do to be a member of the secular order. And of course, there's always room for exceptions, being excused from participating in certain ways because of other obligations. Remember, you have a primary obligation, especially those of you who are married. You have a primary obligation of your family. To acquire the necessary training to know the reasons, the content, and the purpose of the evangelical lifestyle. If you want to start to ask yourself the question, What's the purpose of my evangelical lifestyle as a secular order Carmelite? You have to ask yourself the question, why does God want me to be a discalced Carmelite secular? That's where the purpose is found. Why? Why are you called? Why is your brother or your sister, who might be holier than you, why are they not called to be secular Carmelites? I can ask the same question myself. Why? I have my brothers and sisters are in many ways more holier than I am, but they don't have a vocation to be a discalced Carmelite. I do. So who was the one who decided? Who was the one that decided on this vocation? Given to me in baptism. God the Father. So the purpose, by this commitment, members strive to acquire the necessary training to know the reasons, the content, and the purpose of the evangelical lifestyle they are undertaking. We commit ourselves to live in a certain way. The promise heightens and enriches the baptismal commitment in secular Carmelites. You are more members, because you are members of the order, you are more members of the church. Your commitment to the church is heightened and deepened. So what the church goes through, what the church suffers, what the church expects is interesting to us. The laws of the church, the changes in the church that take place, the pains of the church, the suffering that the church causes, or members of the church cause, the scandals that affect the church. All of these things, to Saint Teresa, were very important. And that was those sufferings, the breakup of the church, the scandals that were being caused by clergy in Saint Teresa's time, was very much a part of the foundation of her discalced Carmelite order. The nuns have a primary obligation to pray for priests in each diocese where the nuns are, so that the priests who are the ones who are preaching, the ones who are supposed to be spreading the gospel, so that they live a life worthy of their responsibilities. So, the baptismal commitment makes us members of the church. We are more members of the church because of our vocation to the secular order. This includes those called to married life, both as spouses and as parents. I've talked to many secular order members throughout the world, and when I was general delegate, I visited 42 countries where the secular order is present. Talked to many members. Many talked about how they were better spouses or better parents because of their participation in the secular order. Some few had difficulties with a spouse who was not understanding of their vocation. And I know not a few who eventually had to leave the secular order because of tension in the family, because of the membership in the secular order. But it's not the general case. It's not the usual case. And as a matter of fact, it's rather exceptional. But the spouse who's a member of the secular order finds a better way to be a spouse. A parent who is a member of the secular order finds a better way to be a parent. the responsibility of praying for your children, praying for your spouse. Not that they become Carmelites, but that they be good, that they be faithful members of the church if they're baptized. So the promise deepens and heightens your baptismal commitment. In your baptismal commitment is your primary vocation to the married life or the single life, vocation to the religious life, vocation to the priesthood. And the promise, therefore, strengthens the original purpose of your life. This promise is renewed once a year in Easter time. The promise is renewed. It's a ceremonial renewal. It's a ritual renewal. It's a devotional renewal. It's not a legal renewal. You make the promise. Generally speaking, you make the promise, temporary promise for 3 years, and then at the end of 3 years, if the community approves, if the council approves of your period of formation, then you make the definitive promise. Those promises are renewed during Easter time, because Easter, especially Easter Sunday, is a reminder of our baptism. Holy Saturday Night Vigil is a celebration of, it's almost the feast day of baptism. And so during the Easter time, we Carmelites renew our commitment devotionally to remind ourselves again of the purpose, content, and reasons for our commitment by making the promise. So that is number 12 of the Constitutions. Thank you for listening. I hope this has been helpful to understand what's written in number 12. Please, if you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the alarm bell so that you get notification of new videos. Make any comments you would like to. You can ask me any question that I might be able to answer. Although some questions sometimes people ask questions that are better answered in their community, or by the council, or by the spiritual assistant. Also, a reminder of the books that are available on Amazon.com, or the books that are in Southeast Asia, the books that are available from the Philippines. There's 366 days of reflections on the St. Teresa and St. John of the Cross. I'm not teaching St. Teresa, St. John of the Cross. That's part of your formation program. But I think the book will be an excellent companion to any formation program. Again, in English-speaking countries, they're available from Amazon.com. I recently received a request from the Polish province, from one of the Polish provinces, to translate the book into Polish, my books, the two volume books into Polish, which I'm very glad to give them the go-ahead, the permission to do. So they're in English, they're in Bahasa Indonesian language, and now they're going to be in Polish. Maybe some more we'll be able to translate. God bless you, and thank you for your attention.